What's up guys? Welcome to my channel. Eris here with another book review, and today we are going to be looking at one of my favorite authors of all time, Stephen King. The book I'm going to be reviewing today is Salem'S Lot. It's not a new novel, it was actually written way back in 1975. I like to call that period between the 70s and the 80s as King's golden age or renaissance, because that was when he produced some of his scariest works in my opinion. Some of my favorites include It, The Shining, Misery, Carrie, and now we can add Salem's Lot to the list. What is Salem's Lot about? To put it simply, Salem's Lot is about vampires. Not the sparkly kind in Twilight, but the classic vampire that people used to be frightened of. It has an air of gothic horror, going back to the classics of vampires as dark, merciless, hungry beings. They don't know mercy. You can't beg for your life from a vampire. If it's gonna suck your blood and make you into its slave, it's going to do that. It's not really explained how these vampires come to this small town called Salem's Lot, but perhaps you don't need an explanation because the focus is really about how, not about how or why they came, but the effect that they have on the town and how the townspeople are going to defeat them. What happens is that people start disappearing, corpses go missing, and the scary part is, like, in the daytime everything appears to be normal on the surface, but there's just this dark undercurrent just pulsing underneath the surface. And I think that creates a great sense of unease in the reader. Things look safe in the daylight on the surface, but you know that shit's going down at night. I like all the characters, they're very well fleshed out, and I actually found myself rooting for them to survive. There's Ben Mears, who is a writer. I think Stephen King has this thing where he likes to project himself into his novels. I can think of multiple instances where the protagonist is actually a writer. So off the top of my head, there's Bill from It, there's Paul from Misery, there's that dude in Secret Window whom I can't remember his name, there's Jack from The Shining, and now we have Ben Mears. Most of his novels also include children, and of course Salem's Lot is no exception. There's this character called Mark Petrie. It's a smart and resourceful teenager. Of course, Stephen King doesn't shy away from killing children, which I think is quite taboo in many other books, and it just creates a sense of added horror because most writers shy away from this kind of dark subject matter, but he isn't afraid to explore it, so kudos to him. In Salem's Lot, there's actually a scene where there's a baby vampire, an infant who was turned into a vampire, and it just creates a real terrifying sense of horror when a baby vampire comes to attack you, because what are you gonna do about it? It used to be human, and we are hardwired to be nurturing and not to harm babies. And even though it's an undead, you still, your mind is still telling you can't hurt a baby. What are the characters going to do in that situation? So it makes it all the more terrifying. There's also the resident doctor Jimmy and the town professor Matt. So together, these main characters, they have to find a way to defeat the evil, basically. I like how the characters rise to the occasion in a very believable manner, especially Matt's character, because he started off as this scholarly figure. He's a college professor, and by the end of it, he turns out to be this wise Van Helsing who is at the helm of, like, setting up a plan in order to, like, defeat all these demons. Now, one thing I really liked about the entire theme of Salem's Lot, I'm just going to digress a bit here. So I was watching a documentary about exorcisms and how the definition of evil has become a lot more complicated or abstract in a sense. These days we think of evil as concepts of what people do to each other. So for example, there's wars, there's terrorism, there's human trafficking, there's murder. They've always been there. I'm not saying that they're not acts of evil, but back in, say, medieval times, people used to think of more tangible fears. Fear in the supernatural. It was more basic, primal fear. A fear of darkness, a fear of loss of one's soul, or when you were a child, you were afraid of the dark. So it's something very primal, something inherited from our cavemen ancestors. You can't help feeling scared of it, even though the darkness is just the darkness, but you fear the unknown. So Salem's Lot actually draws you back into that basic childlike fear of the unknown, of monsters made physical. And the entire thing is then supplemented by the abstract evil that I mentioned earlier. The horrors that people do to each other, domestic violence, abuse, just everyday meanness. It's all covered in the actions of the townspeople. I found myself reading Salem's Lot late into the night, and not many books have the power to keep my interest like that, so well done, Stephen King. That being said, I think there are a couple of things that could be better. Critics of King have long said that his climaxes suck. Like, he's good at starting the story, developing the characters, building the world, but then when it comes to resolving them, he's just not very good at it. And the ending often feels very rushed. So this is my personal opinion. I kind of agree with them, and I felt that Salem's Lot was an example of this. The ending didn't feel very conclusive to me. I know it's a writing technique that some people do to leave like the ending open for a potential sequel or whatever, so it's like a cliffhanger, but I wasn't satisfied with it. I felt like it could have been more complete. Spoiler alert, but evil lives on and it's not truly defeated, and maybe that's how King wants it to be, because evil can never truly be defeated in a sense. But also, after reading the entire novel and getting that kind of resolution where basically there's no what do you call it, concrete way of telling if the good has won. I just felt like it didn't give the resolution that I wanted. So I was a bit disappointed in that. But still, I mean, Salem's Lot is still a great read, one of the better ones from King. If you like classic horror, I'd highly recommend it. That's all for this book review. I hope I have encouraged you to pick up Salem's Lot if you haven't already. If you like this review, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and also, which one is your favorite Stephen King novel? Share them with me. Thank you for listening, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!